This morning, trucks carrying fuel and food could be seen entering Gaza from Egypt, a week after Israel eased its blockade. But Palestinians are still so hungry that they're risking death by walking to Israeli-controlled distribution centres. Eyewitnesses and hospital officials say 27 were shot by Israeli troops today near several aid sites, and those making this journey know just how dangerous it is.
We are collecting pasta from the ground to feed our children, and we can't do more than that. I travelled at 4 o'clock this morning, but because of the heavy gunfire, we were unable to go any further.
And despite these aid drops, Gaza's health ministry says 6 adults have died of malnutrition in the past 24 hours. But 14-year-old Mossab al-Dibs is clinging to life, first paralysed by an Israeli airstrike, then losing 30 kilos due to a shortage of nutrient formula, which he needs to be fed by tube. In a Gaza tunnel, this is a starving Evyatar David, crossing off the days as one of 20 or so living hostages still held by Hamas. His family approved publication of a Hamas video, which they described as showing a living skeleton buried alive. This afternoon, Israel's Prime Minister said he had requested Red Cross access to the hostages. In a tweet, he said Hamas had spread a lie of starvation, when the reality was that systematic starvation was carried out by Hamas, in images which he said recall the crimes of the Nazis. President Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, met hostage families yesterday amid a toughening of America's position against Hamas. No more piecemeal deals, he told the families, instead seeking a comprehensive ceasefire which would see all the hostages released. But for Israel's national security minister, that's not enough. Today, Itamar Ben-Gvir caused outrage in Arab capitals after he said he had prayed outside Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque, known to Jews as the Temple Mount, on a site administered by the Jordanians, where Israel has no sovereignty. We should conquer the whole of the Gaza Strip, he said, kill all of Hamas and encourage voluntary emigration. Only this way, he said, will we return the hostages and win the war.
Jonathan Rugman reporting. Well, earlier I spoke to Adam Rose, a lawyer acting for British families whose relatives are being held hostage in Gaza. I asked him why the hostages' families were so upset at the government's proposal to recognise a Palestinian state with certain conditions.
So they were rather shocked that the statement that came out on Tuesday, whilst it does call for the release of the hostages, does not make the release of the hostages a precondition for recognition of the state of Palestine. They express as families no view whatsoever on whether Palestine should be recognised or not. That's not their issue. Their issue is that their sons, their family members have been held hostage now for 666 days in the dungeons under Gaza.
I mean, just to be clear, in that original statement that you referenced, the Prime Minister said explicitly, our message to the terrorists of Hamas is unchanged and unequivocal. They must immediately release all the hostages, sign up to a ceasefire and accept they will play no part in the government of Gaza. Why wasn't that enough?
Because the very next paragraph goes on to say, we are determined to protect the viability of the two-state solution, and so we will recognise the state of Palestine in September unless the Israeli government agrees to a ceasefire. There is no unless condition attaching to Hamas. So Hamas are perversely incentivised by this statement to hold on to the hostages, because if they can hold on to the hostages and not agree the terms of a ceasefire, Israel cannot meet the conditions that are required. So Israel will not agree to a ceasefire, and Palestine will be recognised as a state. The hostages will still be held in the dungeons.
And that is what the families read and interpret into that statement?
Absolutely, and the families have asked very clearly for the government to clarify that a precondition of recognition is the release of the hostages. And instead of getting that confirmation and that clarification, the government has actually doubled down on its position and said, no, there could be a recognition of the state of Palestine with the hostages still being held. So to read it any other way actually becomes impossible.
And yet the Prime Minister has said in interviews subsequently he is listening to the hostages, to the hostage families. Do you think he is?
Well, he might be listening, but he's not making the clarification. We're not seeking U-turns, we're not seeking change of policy. We're seeking a clarification that the release of the hostages is a precondition to anything happening.
I mean, the government's argument for moving to this position is perhaps born out of some desperation. You know, it's that they've got to do something to try to put pressure on the Israeli government. Do the families have any sympathy or any acceptance of that as an argument?
The families are first and foremost interested in the release of their family members as hostages. Of course, everyone is sympathetic to innocent people who are caught up in a war. There's no question about that. But this is not the way to resolve things. This is just beating up Israel. And as one of the hostage families says, rewarding Hamas when Hamas is holding the hostages. Israel is not holding these hostages.
You've written an open letter in which you talk about how prior to this government and the last, to an extent, trust had been built up between the families and the government. Has that trust gone completely now, would you say?
No, we always have to retain a trust. We have to retain a level of hope. The families expect the government to fulfill its promise, to do everything it can to achieve the release of the hostages. That's what it's promised the families, and that's what the families still expect.
And can I just end by asking, terrible images have been released of two hostages being held, looking absolutely emaciated, Ron Braslavsky and Itamar David. That must be another brutal blow to all the hostage families.
Absolutely brutal. There are 50 hostages still being held. We believe 20 are alive. One of those, Avinatan Or, is a 32-year-old whose mother is British and for whom we have been acting. What Avinatan's mother is going through is beyond horrific. It's the most dreadful, dreadful imagery. The pictures that came out yesterday of this young man absolutely emaciated, saying that he is digging his own grave while standing in a tunnel some 50 metres under Gaza City is beyond compare.
Adam Rose, thanks very much for talking to us.
Thank you.